Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Please, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, that was an incredibly nice introduction. She read it just like I wrote it, and but thank you so much for doing this. Really, she actually is a pretty big deal herself. She does a phenomenal. So let's give her a hand. She's doing a phenomenal job. She's earned the respect of her colleagues, not just on issues of national defense, where she's become a real leader, but on issues of fiscal policy. Earlier the year, I had an opportunity to do something they called what do they call it, a colloquy, or we went back and forth on the jobs issue. I think it was one of my most highest rated YouTube videos on my personal page, and I don't think it was because of me, because she was in it. So and so she's done a phenomenal job on that as well, and she's doing a great job on a number of things. It represents an important state in our country. And more importantly, and I'll speak to about that in a moment, is a real strong advocate for life. And it's not as, it's a difficult, I think you're the, if I'm not mistaken, the only pro-life female senator. So you are a caucus of one in that issue. And so we're honored, I'm honored by your words, and we're honored by your presence. And more importantly, we're honored by your stance on life, and we need to get you some company in the U.S. Senate now. Kelly and I have a lot in common. We have young families. We were both elected at the same class. Our last names end in vowels. And with all due respect, I don't mean to offend anybody in the U.S. Senate. We are significantly, I would say, younger than the median age of the United States Senate. But I don't mean that as a criticism. On the contrary, I was speaking to one of our colleagues tonight. I told him I would be coming here to the Susan B. Anthony event. He said he knew Susan B. Anthony. He said that Susan B. Anthony was a friend of his. And he said I was no Susan B. Anthony. So anyway, that happened tonight. The truth about the Senate, I had this great line that someone told me. You heard the same thing. When we got there, they said, look, when you first get there, and it was absolutely true, you first get to the United States Senate, you look around these rooms where you're having lunch, and these, you know, to the left of you is somebody you've been seeing for years on Meet the Press. To the right, there's somebody that ran for president. You know, these just really historic figures, and you ask yourself, how did I get here? I mean, how did I make it here? Well, about 6 months later, you ask yourself, how did they get here? So, anyway, so thank you for having me. I actually this is such an important issue for me that I had written out a speech, some of the things I wanted to say to you tonight, and then I lost it. So I rewrote them in like a note here, so you'll forgive me, I'm a little disjointed. And the teleprompter was broken. We aren't able to. We sent it to the teleprompter shop, but someone else in Washington was apparently in the shop ahead of us. So anyway, so we're going to have to wait to get that one back. So I'll just kind of go off my notes here. But let me just start by saying how honored I am to be a part of this event tonight, and really blown away to see so many of you that are involved, that give not just money but time to this extraordinarily important cause. I was really inspired to see the young women that stood on the stage moments ago, because I understand that in the culture that we live in today, it's difficult to be pro-life. Even though, by the way, I always chuckle, because when I was running for office throughout my career, I've been consistently pro-life throughout my life, and I always laugh as some characterize that as radical, even though all the polls show that at least, at a minimum, half of the people in this country agree with me. So I don't understand why a 50% position, at a minimum, by the way, because other polling indicates that, in fact, when you dig deeper, between 70 and 75% of Americans really agree with us at the end of the day in terms of seeing significant restrictions on abortions. I never quite understood why people would say that. So that alone indicates the mindset that exists among those that cover politics and make commentary on politics, is that somehow being pro-life is a radical position. Being a young person who's pro-life makes those comments happen even more often. And being a young woman that's pro-life, of all the things I could outline, is perhaps the most You get perhaps more pressure there and more scorn than any other demographic in our country when it comes to that issue. So as we look at these young women that came here tonight and not just are pro-life, but are working on behalf of life as a fundamental tenet of our society, I'm inspired by that, and I really wanted to thank them and everyone else who wasn't recognized but is also part of that movement, and all of you for making it possible for them to do that. Being in politics, being in the Senate, I give a lot of speeches about a lot of things. Tax policy, the national debt. These are all very important issues. These are important political issues and policy decisions that confront our country. The issue of life is not a political issue, nor is it a policy issue. It's a definitional issue. It is a basic, core issue that every society needs to answer. And the answer that it gives on that issue ends up defining which kind of society you have. That's how important the issue is. And what I wanted to do briefly tonight for a few moments is just encourage all of you that are involved in this cause, because I know that sometimes it's easy to get discouraged, especially those that enter the public arena. You take a beating for being pro-life from those who cover politics too often. And I think sometimes it has a tendency to wear people down. Sometimes, listen, when I criticize people, I always include myself. Sometimes you feel like, maybe let's just not touch that issue today because it divides people. Let's just focus on the 80% issues and the stuff people want you to talk about. And I know I have, and many of you have as well, had people tell you, why do you have to talk about that? It makes us uncomfortable. Why do you have to speak about this issue? It divides people. Just focus on the economic issues. Focus on the economy. Focus on jobs. Focus on the national debt. That's what people want to hear about. Well, we can't do that, because the national debt is important. The economy is important. It is the central political issue of our time. But this is not a political issue. In fact, this is an issue that, especially for those who enter the public arena and refuse to leave our faith behind, speaks to more than just our politics. It speaks to what we want to do with the opportunity we've been given in our life to serve and to glorify our Creator. And so that's what this issue is about as well. But let me just say at the outset, there are multiple reasons to be pro-life, not the least of which is that Roe versus Wade is bad constitutional law. Irrespective of how you feel about the issue, it is bad law. It is perhaps the most egregious and devastating example of a court that has decided that because the political branch will not deal with an issue they believe is important, they're going to step in and make a policy decision. They literally create a constitutional right out of nothing for the purpose of advocating a specific political position. So just on the legal grounds alone is enough reason to be against Roe versus Wade. There's one I won't get into in depth tonight because A, I don't have to, and B, it's not why you wanted me to speak. And there's a spiritual aspect to this, which is very real. And I think virtually every faith condemns the practice of abortion, recognizes that life is a gift from the Creator, and compels followers to believe that as well, as a basic tenet of your faith. So from the spiritual realm, there are multiple ways to defend this. But I think the one I want to focus on tonight, not because it's any more important than the other ones, is there is pure, logical public policy reasons why abortion is bad for America, bad for our society, and bad for our people, and why Roe versus Wade should be overturned. Now, the argument is that there is a fundamental right to abortion in America. That is the argument that those in the pro-abortion, so-called pro-choice community would say, that there is a fundamental right to abortion, that women in this country have a right to have an abortion. So what's the source of this right? As you engage people in this conversation, by the way, I want you to know, I've never met anyone that's admitted to me that they're pro-abortion.